Good morning, everybody. We have a special service today because the people from Unite that usually attend the 12:15 service are with us today, and we give them a round of applause and hope that you'll come back. Today begins the first of a two-part series on reality. Reality is everything, and each and every one of us lives in our own unique and individual reality. Sometimes reality is based on truth, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we can't tell the difference. I was reminded of a friend of my cousin Ozzy's, Lars Iverson, and Lars runs a tavern in Nunda, South Dakota. And Ozzy went to the tavern, and Lars was saying, I have a very, very big problem. Ozzy asked him what? He says, there's somebody under my bed at night. I'll get up and I'll look under the bed, there's no one there, but the minute I go back to bed, I know that there's somebody there. Lars says, I've been to a psychiatrist, he can't seem to help me. I've done hypnosis, doesn't seem to help me. I've taken sedatives before I go to bed, yet still I cannot sleep because of that person under my bed. Cousin Ozzy says, give me your keys, Lars. I'll be back in a half hour. Ozzy races out the door, comes back, gives Lars his keys and says, you never, ever have to worry about that person under your bed again. And Lars says, what did you do? And Cousin Ozzy said, I cut the legs off your bed. All right. Thanks, Phil. You stay in that front seat, will you? As I said before, I'm talking about reality today, and this is the third of a two-part series because reality is everything. Reality is what you experience when you define whatever's going on in the world around you. Every one of us comes into this world. Our mind is like a blank slate, so to speak. People around us start imposing or impressing different beliefs on us, attitudes and perceptions. And through that, we develop this belief system that we look at the world through. And that tells us what the meaning is of all the things that are going on around us. But the problem is, the reality is different for every single person. It all comes down to whether you were the firstborn child, the last child, the middle child, whether you're raised in a Republican family or Democrat family, whether you're black or white, whether you're male or female. All these different factors come into play for you and you alone in your individual reality because that tints the way you see things. Your reality is unlike any other reality in the entire world. Now, reality isn't something that's fixed. It is fluid. It moves. It can change in a split second. You're driving down the highway, all of a sudden a truck goes out of control, rams into you, you get hurt, maybe permanently injured. Your reality has changed forever. You have a good friend that passes on or a loved one, your reality changes forever, especially when it comes to women and children. Or mothers and fathers and children, excuse me. When a parent dies, say a father for instance, you wake up the next day in a world for the first time where you do not have a parent or a father in your life. That's a different reality. People will go through divorces, experience a different reality once the divorce has completed itself. And sometimes the reality that we get thrust into isn't kind. It hurts. It's not easy to handle. A divorce that comes about under very harsh conditions can be painful. We can suffer under it. The loss of a loved one, as I said before, allows us to suffer because of the loss of that loved one. All sorts of different things can take us down into a depth that is so dark and so deep that we lose faith and we lose hope that we'll ever be able to rise up again and move into a life that is joyful and fulfilling. Now, every alcoholic, every recovered alcoholic knows the reality they were living in just before the day when they woke up and said, that's it, I'm not drinking anymore. It was dismal. It was bleak. It was at the bottom, as they say. Every gay person knows when they were hiding their sexuality in the closet, that was one reality that was filled with fear and filled with guilt and filled with all sorts of shame and different things. It's afraid that somebody would find out. But once they come out and they go through the immediate upheaval, that takes place, then they find a reality that supports them and that's better than anything they've ever had. Sometimes we experience situations and circumstances that are so devastating. They take us down so far that we think life will never be the same again. I'll never be able to be as happy as I once was. I'll never be able to be as free as I once was. For some people, losing a job at an older age brings that on because their entire identity is wrapped up in the position that they held. When that goes, they don't have a reality. They have to start recreating it all over again. But the thing about it is, no matter how down we go, no matter how dark things get, no matter how bleak life might seem, there is a spiritual attribute that each and every one of us has. It wasn't given to us. It's inherent within our very spirit, within our soul, and that is called grace. Now, fundamental religions believe that grace is a gift from God that can be taken back. If you're not a good person, no grace. If you don't follow the dictates and the doctrines and the dogma of the church, you will not get God's grace. If you don't live the life of a good person, there is no grace for you. But the fact of the matter is, grace is part of us. It's part of our spirit. God doesn't give it and take it back. It's permanent. It never goes away. It never depletes. It is always there, and that is the recovering factor of our being. When we're down and out, there is something that allows us to rise above the heavy attitudes that are holding us down and move towards something that is going to be fulfilling to us. Oftentimes when we get in situations or circumstances that are dark, our mind can't comprehend everything that's going on, and all of a sudden we wake up and it's like we're in this tunnel, this dark tunnel, and we can't see any light on either end. And we sit there wondering, what do I do? Which way do I go? And we become convinced that that is going to be the rest of our lives, so we just sit there and we do not move, and life passes us by. But grace is that light at the end of the tunnel. Grace deals with the future, not the past. Grace won't intervene in your life and stop something from happening. It's not going to dictate or control the world around us. But no matter what happens to us, it is there to lift us up and to move us forward to reach higher states of happiness and well-being. Now, I could talk all day about grace, but nothing would convey the power of grace more so than a person named Anne. I had graduated from the seminary, went to work in a little church in Prairie Village. I was the only one on staff, and one day, about my second weekend, somebody called me, and she said her name was Anne. She lived in a small town in western Kansas. And I said, hi. And she said, I understand that Unity has healing principles, and I have a condition I want to heal. I said, well, what is that? And she explained to me about 6 months earlier, her and her husband had gone out celebrating, and on their way home that night, they got in an accident. She severed her spinal cord and lost all control of the bottom part of her body. After a month in the hospital, she finally went home, and she asked her best friend to move in with her, her husband, and their 2 boys to help until they could get a system down where Anne would be able to manage the household. Well, Anne said, my husband came to me and said he's leaving me, that he's fallen in love with my girlfriend, and they're going off together. So now she's lost half her body, she lost her husband, she lost her best friend. There she is. And she says, all I want is my life back. I want to be able to walk, I want a husband, I want a family, I want a best friend. Can Unity get that to me? Can Unity heal me so I can get up from this wheelchair and move forward? I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to give her false hope. I just said, I don't know. She said, but I read in the Unity pamphlets and the books that I have about the healing power of God, the healing power of Jesus Christ within us. Can you help me find that? I said, well, let's start. So over the next several months, she would call once a week or so, and we would talk about her condition and what was going on. Nothing had improved. Her husband wasn't sending her money to help with the kids. She was still all alone in the house with a boy 8 and a boy 9. Well, finally she quit calling. And then about a year later, she called me just out of the blue. And I said, well, tell me how you're doing. She says, I'm doing fantastic. She said, shortly after I talked to you last time, I read a story, and in that story I saw myself. And it was about a man who went to visit a friend of his in the country. The friend had a large estate. And one day the friend went out for a walk. But the friend warned him there's a lot of 40 to 50 foot deep holes out in the land, which are mines, old mine shafts that haven't been filled in. So be very careful. The man was walking around, he lost track of time. All of a sudden it turned dark, and he walked very slowly because he's afraid he'd fall into one of those mines. Well, despite his caution, he did fall. But fortunately, as he's going down, he was able to cling to a rock coming out of the wall of the mine shaft. And so there he hung. Well, after a while, his arms began to ache so much that he thought, I'm just going to have to let go. I can't do this anymore. And just at that moment, he heard voices off in the distance. They'd sent out a search party for him. And people began to listen for him as he yelled out. And eventually they found their way to him. And when they came up to him hanging in the mine shaft, they shined their flashlight down. And his feet were hanging like 1 foot from the ground. It was a mine shaft that had been filled in. So Anne told me when I read this, I suddenly realized that I was that man hanging by that rock. I was clinging to it, and that rock represented my previous life. That rock represented my husband, my best friend, being able to walk, being able to be productive in society. And I was clinging to it. I didn't want to let it go. I wanted it to come back, and I thought that I could not live until that happened. And she said, as fearful as it was, I had to let go of all of it. All those memories, all those dreams, all those desires, but what had been, but is no more. And in that, I came to the realization that not being able to walk didn't mean not being able to live. She said, I started to get active. I got a part-time job at the library. I became the umpire at my son's softball game. I met a gentleman, and he's starting to take me out on the weekends. And I love to garden. My sons will push me out there, and we'll get down in the dirt together, and we'll plant our garden. She says, when I think back, my life was never really happy before. My husband and I argued a lot. We used a lot of drugs. We drank a lot. We weren't good parents to our kids. I wasn't happy. But today I am happier than I've ever been. And if I could go back and change everything where the accident didn't happen, knowing what I know today and living the life I'm living today, I wouldn't do it. See, that's the power of grace. We can all relate to the person to be down to the point where she seems to have lost everything. What could life possibly provide her that would create happiness and joy within her? We're so focused on what we have lost or on what has happened that we don't turn and look at the future of what our potential might be. And she is a perfect example of that. There's a song called Amazing Grace. And once again, most of us can identify with it. It says, I once was lost, but now I see. Or excuse me, I once was blind, but now I see. And there have been times in my life, and your life too, I'm sure, where you're so blinded by the conditions in life, so blinded by the hurt and the pain you were experiencing that you could not see beyond your own condition. Is that I once was lost, but now I'm found. I've been lost in life, not knowing what my life's all about, what the purpose is, what the meaning is, where to go next. But I was found. I found my path that led me to that which fulfills my heart and gives me joy. So as we go into meditation today, I want you to think a little bit about your life. Are you living the reality that you want to live? And if not, are you open to exploring a new reality where all of those things that plague you from the reality you're in now stay there and you move forward to a reality that is uplifting and transformational? We'll now move into meditation.